Hello, everyone, and welcome to the AikiCast. I'm your host, Sewell, and we are going to be diving into the true essence of Aikido. Aikido may mean something different for everybody, but instead of doing what we normally hear on the internet and throughout different, sources, instead of talking about what Aikido isn't, we're going to talk about what it is. And let's go to the literal translation of the words Aikido from its Japanese origin. I meaning harmony, ki meaning spirit or energy, and do meaning a way or path. So, literally translating to the way or path of spiritual harmony. Been training Aikido for a very long time. Excuse me. I'm kind of battling a cold here. Been training Aikido for a very long time, 20 plus years. And I can tell you, starting in, high school, junior high, Aikido was a way of spiritual harmony for me. It was a way to keep me active. It was my physical education during that time as I was homeschooled. It, gave me a sense of community. It taught me accountability. It taught me how to handle adversity in a safe environment. So when I encountered adversity in the real world outside of the dojo, it gave me strength. It gave me confidence and gave me exposure and let me know that I can conquer challenges and overcome them, and that fear is a natural occurrence, but learning also to not let fear and concerns and parts of doubt kind of take over. It also taught me, aside from confidence, discipline, how to stay dedicated to something. I think that carried on to my other martial arts experience, which I can talk about later. But Aikido has been the forefront of also molding me as a young man into the adult I am today. Those skills of discipline and the martial arts way, that path of being honorable and just and dedicated and learning how to deal with people and treat them fairly and resolve situations calmly and peacefully. That helped me in the workplace. That helped me in my relationship with my wife. That helped me with my friendships and all the challenges I've had, and even situations that were so tough I didn't know how I could survive. I always fall back to that training, that root, that essence. Obviously, some strengths and things came from home and my upbringing, my moral compass. But Aikido is the one thing that actually continued to and always stayed a part of me. And we often use that term, the way or the path. And I want to dive into that because that could mean something different for everyone. And again, we're talking about what Aikido is, not what Aikido isn't. There's a few principles I'd like to share. One being Zanshin, maintaining awareness, surroundings, and kind of settling and focusing. Another principle of Kazushi, which we don't use that term enough, I think, in Aikido, the unbalancing, the concept of controlling the situation and getting your opponent off balance so the technique can actually happen in its true form. That uh, concept isn't just solely owned by Aikido. You'll see it in Judo, you'll see it in Jiu-Jitsu, you'll see it in wrestling. It's in all the grappling arts and arts, the body arts, you'll see. But the way Aikido offers this is something a little different, just with how the format of training is. Especially since Aikido doesn't have the sports and competitive aspect, it mainly relies on the cooperation and the collaborative and creative development of the individuals working together, moving towards the same goal. I'll elaborate for those who are new. A general practice session will include a technique being shown by the instructor, demonstration. You'll work with a partner. We'll use the term drills because essentially these are drills or kata forms or movements and concepts we're working out to understand. And in this format, we'll have four goes. Each person will do the technique four times. They will have their drilling partner give them, the desired amount of, I won't say resistance, but body energy so they actually can move and learn and build the concepts. And the more we train, the more we focus, the more we give, the more we can improve. Ukemi, the uke, the what I like to call the burglar, the receiving person or the attacker. This is the person that's giving themselves during the drill to actually help, learn and share and develop this knowledge and, further these principles that are being shared. And Nage being the person applying the technique, their job or their role during this encounter is to actually apply the technique, go deeper with the principles, with the understanding and the drill and cooperation of Uke. So again, even at its core principles, we're talking about a collaboration. Next thing I want to talk about is atemi, which again, I don't think is talked about enough. Atemi is sort of like a strike, or if we think about it in a modern standpoint, like a feint. It could actually be, almost like a jab or something, but we kind of use these as a place to, you know, take your opponent's, focus away from what's about to happen, slowing them down, using this feint to kind of create misdirection so that a technique can be applied. Again, in this controlled environment, we're learning how these principles could apply in an actual, physical altercation or a setting where there is resistance. But again, falling back to those principles of building these concepts, understanding them, and taking prior knowledge and or even someone with no knowledge of martial arts or grappling or any type of style to actually learn how to make these things work for them. And also, not just being so physical, there's the mental aspect of this. There's the sort of, if, in some cases for people, the spiritual aspects, right? There's a sense of community. There's this thing, this goal that I mentioned that we're all moving in the same direction. And O Sensei's vision of creating a united world where people from all over can train in this art, leave their, we'll use the term egos at the door. I think all martial arts include an ego as long as you have a healthy one. But Aikido, since it's not sports driven, there's no competition. In some ways, the goal is designed to kind of lower that. And I do see that, especially working in different spaces and spending so much time training in, the competitive combat sports world with, Muay Thai and MMA and Jiu-Jitsu and primarily just Jiu-Jitsu on that side. But I can see the connections between the two. And training Aikido for so long, moving into another art, it made things a lot easier for me just because of how much I realize I've learned from the Aikido training, my tolerance, my ukemi, number one, and the ability to understand Kazushi in a very unique way because Aikido is you have so much room and flexibility to, when your partner's cooperating doing these drills to actually discover. The next principle is a Rimi entering. There's a lot of situations and techniques where you're entering instead of receiving. Um, this could be in a form of creating a throw. It could be buckled with or coupled with an atemi. We'll show some examples of that. But all this together builds on those principles we talk about giving you options. You know, um, and Aikido is mainly defensive. We have this joke, my favorite old joke from when I started. If two Aikido people encountered each other on the street and there was an altercation looming about to happen, they would both stand there and stare at each other because true Aikidoists wouldn't, you know, initiate. They would be on the defense. That's another thing I carried over in my training that I thought was to my detriment, which actually made things a lot easier for me to thrive in other spaces and arts with those core principles. Tenkan, one of the basic movements and turns, kind of learning how to blend and redirect. If you see this exercise solo, it looks very flowy and dancey. But the idea is footwork is one of the core principles in Aikido, just in posture and movement, just like in any other martial art, striking arts. And you can go across the board in the traditional, the non traditional, but Aikido applies this in a different way because it's always working in the spherical and uh, sort of blending and flowing aspect. And I, am one of those people who really appreciated the flow and beauty of Aikido, which is what drew me to it. The ukemi, the falls, the flips. I was a big fan of gymnastics and I never got to do that. So Aikido was the closest thing I could get to becoming a movie stuntman. So, being so young and being introduced to it and having that as an activity and having the ability, thankfully, to train as much as possible, I would go every day. And I was intrigued more and more about this art and what it is because agree with me, hopefully. If you have a different interpretation, I'd love to hear it. Aikido is one of those things that's very hard to explain. It's something you have to feel. You can see it, it can be explained to you, but once you feel it, once you get on the mat, and I think I could say that about most martial arts. For instance, I'll go back to the jujitsu example because that's the closest one. And folks, we're just tying some things together here. This is an Aikido podcast, so bear with me. We often have these concepts of how rough and hard and challenging dangerous these things could be, and they don't look very pretty when they're applied against resistance. They don't have the same beauty and flow as Aikido at some level, at the sports level, but at the true art level. And Jiu-Jitsu literally means gentle art. If you see that high level practitioners training, they'll get into this flow state where the sparring match doesn't really look like they both have goals to try to dominate or injure each other. It looks like there's these beautiful exchanges. Now, mind you, they're a little unique because a lot of the work is done on the floor, but you'll see that same or a similar style of beauty at the highest levels, right? So the art form itself has those principles that are still beautiful in their own way. Now, we're talking about Aikido again here. If you think about that, if you remove that sort of sense of resistance and you're able to let go and, offer to your partner, the correct or the most appropriate looks or feelings during their training, you can be a excellent training partner, help them learn, and you can help yourself learn by understanding from the side of okay, what unbalanced me here? How did this technique work? Let me go deeper. And also furthering your study, as I used to do, as most of you probably do, going to seminars, you know, extending and seeing how much this wonderful community has. Now, bear in mind, people will be people, there's disagreements, people leave, change regimes, start their own things. But if you think about it, even at its core, someone starting their own thing and branching off into their own version, technically the goal can be the same. Now, sometimes politics get in the way and people are driven by money and other things. No discredit to them, I understand. But if you're thinking about the true goal of carrying on an essence or a feeling from what you got from your first experience in Aikido, what drew you in and kept you in, this hobby, this lifestyle, this thing that turned into, you know, decades of a passion project that you try to explain to your friends and everyone doesn't understand except for those folks you share this practice with. That's what I'm talking about. That thing you think about and want to talk about all the time for hours. And that's what this is about today, the AikiCast. Sharing that love. And I think this is a beautiful time, a perfect time. We're in a place where we're in the information age and you can see it and talk about it. But what drew me to Aikido and kept me in and what, brought me to other martial arts is hearing podcasts like this and hearing from professionals, from instructors, from people of all walks of life explaining their experience. And that's what we're going to do on the AikiCast. So I look forward to sharing these concepts with you, having some deep conversations, getting into some of the stuff we don't want to talk about. But what I won't do on this podcast, in no way are we going to slander or discredit anyone. We're going to talk about our experiences, share them in a constructive way, and we're going to learn from each other because that's what this is all about. That's what O Sensei would want. I believe, the late Yamada Sensei and Donovan Waite Sensei and countless others who have paved the way for us would want that. So instead of, focusing on how do we take Aikido further, I think it starts with a conversation. And there are plenty of conversations to be had. And I want to have those with you if you'll take the time. So look forward to working with you all. We have some cool interviews coming up. I'll share some of my thoughts on my own. And everyone, I'm looking forward to taking this journey with you on the AikiCast. Stay on the path, folks. I'll see you on the mats.